Now, from your breaking news leader, with your certified most accurate forecast, this is KKTV 11 News at 5:30.
And coming up on 11 News at 5:30, a devastating fire here in Colorado Springs on Christmas Eve sent 3 people to the hospital. We've got the latest on the investigation by police. Good evening, I'm Tony Keith. Adam Atchison has the night off. And this is happening right now. We're following a breaking news update. Law enforcement officials in Nashville say they found human remains in the area where an explosion rocked the city early this morning. We've got a live picture from near the scene where the investigation continues. Now, it's unclear how the remains are related to the explosion or whether they might belong to the person believed to be responsible or a victim. Investigators believe the explosion was deliberate. Elise Preston reports.
The explosion shook the heart of downtown Nashville, unleashing giant flames and a cloud of black smoke, leaving a path of charred debris, shattered glass, and ruptured water lines.
It looks like a bomb went off on 2nd Avenue. That's, an explosion.
As officers swarmed to the scene, police said this was not an accident.
We do believe that the explosion was an intentional act.
Shortly before the blast, police had received reports of shots fired.
As officers responded, they encountered an RV that had a recording saying that a potential bomb would detonate within 15 minutes. Officers, upon hearing that, decided to evacuate the buildings nearby.
Minutes later, the RV exploded, knocking an officer to the ground. The Nashville FBI is now heading the investigation and says it has investigative leads, but also asked the public for tips.
This is our city too. We live here, we work here, and we're putting everything we have into finding who was responsible for what's happened here today.
Nashville police tweeted this photo of the RV as it arrived in the early morning hours and asked the public for information. The downtown streets were mostly deserted on Christmas morning, which kept injuries to a minimum.
We've made 3 transports to area hospitals. None of those transports at this point are critical.
As K-9 units searched the area, federal resources flowed into Nashville, including explosive specialists with the top priority of making sure there are no further threats to public safety. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
Now, the explosion was right outside the AT&T building, and there are reports of service outages across the entire city. Well, moving to an update to an 11 breaking news alert that we first brought you last night, Colorado Springs police are investigating a structure fire that injured 3 people. Now, this happened just after 9 on Oro Blanco Drive near Austin Bluffs and Barnes Road. 2 adults and 1 child were injured in the fire. 2 of the 3 had serious burns, but it's unclear if the child was seriously injured. If you've got any information, please call police. We want to get to your no-wait weather with meteorologist Christina San Juan. And Christina, it wasn't a white Christmas, but it was a bright Christmas.
I see what you did there, Tony. It certainly was a beautiful day. Didn't really feel much like Christmas, but I know I'll take it. Temperatures got up into the upper 50s in Pueblo, 55 degrees here in the Springs. And out there right now, we're actually doing better than most of the country as far as the temperatures go. 44 degrees still here in the Springs. So no problems the rest of your Christmas evening. Temperatures eventually going to bottom out about 26 degrees, a little bit above average for this time of year, not quite as cold as the last couple of nights out there. The only place falling into the teens looking like over toward Teller County as you're going to hit a low about 19 degrees overnight. So we do have one more mild day on the way for our Saturday. Temperatures going to be even warmer than what we had out there today, but we're looking quite unsettled to end the weekend and then start the new work week. I'll talk much more about that along with who gets to see some snow around here coming up a little bit later in the show. Tony.
Hey, thank you so much, Christina. Love the Christmas dress, by the way. Well, hundreds of people came out as a local organization spent Christmas morning giving out free meals. The Salvation Army was able to feed about 2,000 people across El Paso County. 11 News reporter Nicole Hines joins us live from the Colorado Springs headquarters. And Nicole, how long have they been handing out these meals?
This has been a tradition for 30 years for the Salvation Army, and this year they did have to make some changes because of COVID by only having a drive-up and delivery services instead of an in-person dining. The organization knows this year has been difficult because of the pandemic. They saw an increase in the need for the food pantry and for rental assistance, so they knew the demand for these holiday meals would be up. The Salvation Army says with the pandemic, they had to have a limited amount of people inside the building, and they had to turn away volunteers towards Christmas. I spoke with the officer in charge of the Salvation Army in El Paso County. He tells me these meals are very important for people during this time of year.
I think the reason it's particularly important, our meals and showing people hope during COVID, is people might have lost hope during this season. And we're just one other way that we can reinstill hope into other people, that there are those that care.
They were able to feed people in Woodland Park, Manitou Springs, and Fountain Valley as well. Live in Colorado Springs, Nicole Hines, KKTV 11 News.
Hey, thank you so much, Nicole. Well, moving on to other Colorado news, a Colorado judge is making 2 liquor store employees write apology letters. That's just part of the sentence handed out this week for the pair convicted of selling alcohol to someone visibly intoxicated before their customer caused a deadly crash. The letters are going to go to the families of 2 innocent victims killed in another car. The driver's blood alcohol content was more than 3 times the legal limit when the crash happened in Breckenridge in August of last year. Well, this is happening right now. COVID-19 cases across the U.S., they're continuing to skyrocket. Johns Hopkins University is reporting more than 18.6 million people in the U.S. have confirmed cases. Health officials say that number could continue to rise with people across the country gathering for the holidays. More than 1 million people in the U.S. have already received their first COVID-19 vaccination. Here in Colorado, cases are on the decline, and more than 63,000 people have received a dose of a COVID vaccine. Looking ahead now, lawmakers are preparing to return to D.C. after the holiday to discuss the COVID relief bill and stop a government shutdown. Now, this relief bill was passed earlier this week in Congress. The bill has been flown to Florida in case the president decides to sign it, but Tuesday he suggested that he might not. The president wants lawmakers to increase direct stimulus payments from $600 to $2,000. House Democrats say they'll hold a vote on the proposal for $2,000 payments. Lawmakers may also have to stave off a government shutdown with COVID relief attached to the $1.4 trillion government spending bill. Well, a busy week for airports across our country despite the pandemic. Coming up, many people spent Christmas Eve on a plane and how that stacks up compared to last year. Plus, some new travel restrictions for another major country. Everything you need to know if you plan on visiting the United Kingdom anytime soon, right after the break. For the 6th day in a row, U.S. travel is seeing an all-time high since the pandemic started. Nearly 1 million people flew in the U.S. yesterday on Christmas Eve. Now, the TSA says it screened more than 846,000 people at airports nationwide. That's a third of the 2.5 million people who flew on Christmas Eve a year ago. Christmas Eve follows 6 straight days of U.S. air travel numbers near or more than 1 million passengers. Well, looking ahead now, starting Monday, people who fly from the United Kingdom are required to test negative for COVID-19. A new coronavirus variant believed to be transmissible was found in England. Travelers are going to be required to take the COVID test within 3 days of their flight. British Airways and Virgin Atlantic are working with authorities to meet testing requirements. Dozens of countries have implemented full bans on travelers from the UK. And this is happening right now. From the Midwest to the East Coast, people are cleaning up from a major winter storm. Minnesota's Twin Cities were hit with more than 8 inches of snow this week, single-digit temperatures with wind gusts as high as 65 miles per hour. Now, winter storm watches were extended as far south as Kentucky and Tennessee.
I'm shoveling out my house, absolutely. We got a lot of snow last night. The first was wet and raining and then froze down, but it's cold enough. People should have boots on.
On the East Coast, areas like New York City saw 2 to 4 inches of rain and wintry blasts of wind up to 70 miles per hour. But out here in Colorado, incredibly calm, Christina.
Yeah, meanwhile here we hit 55 degrees today. Well, you know what? The last white Christmas we did have was over 30 years ago, so it's not really out of the ordinary not to see much snow around here for Christmas. We do have some snow in the forecast though, and I'll tell you more about that coming up after the break. For the remainder of the week, by this time next week, we are still looking dry. Temperatures starting to slowly climb up. Tony.
Hey, thank you so much, Christina. Definitely need the moisture. But moving on, a couple of guys spreading some holiday cheer. Still to come on 11 News at 5:30. I've got your Good News Friday. Details on how Christmas came early for a few dozen people at a Colorado mall and what's coming up in sports.
Well, for a lot of us, Christmas is all about traditions, and here at KKTV Sports Department, we have a little tradition of our own.
We do. We like to have a little bit of fun as well.
We do.
Dressing the part. We're counting down our top 11 sports stories of 2020. Coming up next.
This stock market report is sponsored by Carlson Financial, putting you on the better side of retirement planning.
Holidays, of course, we'll see you back here at 10 o'clock.
All right, time for some good news on a Friday. Normally this segment runs in the morning, but without a morning show, today I still wanted to spread some smiles. This bit of good news comes from the north. A couple of Colorado guys, Kevin and Jeff, sharing some holiday cheer. They sent us a few videos of when they paid a visit to Flatiron Crossing Mall, that's in Broomfield, northwest of Denver. On Tuesday, they threw out $500 in cash and then delivered toys to strangers. The mall wasn't packed, so there was no mad rush for the money. Jeff tells me some kids ended up with $50 each. A lot of smiles that day, just randomly throwing cash. Love sharing the good news. And coming up later tonight on 11 News at 10, as we get closer to the new year, I'll be counting down the top 11 videos of 2020 sent in by you, our viewers. That goes along nicely with the top 10 countdown in sports. And I just want to give a shout out to everyone out there, all the first responders working on this Christmas day, their families. Hopefully you're having a wonderful Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you're having a great Friday. And remember, KKTV 11 News is your breaking news leader. We're always on at kktv.com. We'll see you again tonight at 10. Part of Nashville looks like a war zone. We've got the latest as the FBI investigates what happens to what appears to be an intentional explosion moments after an RV was blaring an unsettling message. Plus, the investigation continues as police try to figure out the cause behind a fire here in Colorado Springs on Christmas Eve that sent 3 people, including a child, to the hospital. And later in the show, we're counting down the top 11 videos of 2020 sent in by our KKTV viewers.
Now, with 11 minutes of nonstop news and your certified most accurate forecast, this is KKTV 11 News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Tony Keith. Adam Atchison has the night off, and we're following an 11 breaking news alert out of Nashville tonight, where a weekend-long curfew is now in place as police continue to investigate an RV that exploded this morning in the downtown area. Authorities believe human remains have been found near the site of the explosion, and right now federal investigators are combing through a crime scene extending several city blocks from the streets to the rooftops. We know at least 3 people were injured by the blast. Daryl Forges is on the ground in Nashville with the latest.
A haunting message warning people to evacuate. And the moment a massive fireball rocked downtown Nashville caught on camera.
The early morning explosion was a deliberate bomb being set off in our community.
They heard an RV giving out a message, basically saying that it was going to detonate.
We believe it was a female voice from the video telling people to evacuate the area.
Damaging dozens of homes and businesses and turning popular tourist areas into a scene resembling a war zone.
I consider this a serious and intentional attack on American infrastructure, and I don't know anybody who would do that except a terrorist.
The blast right next to an AT&T transmission building, impacting 911 communications. The motive remains unknown, but some retired FBI agents say first responders may have been the target.
The person obviously did not want civilians injured.
The 911 call said there were shots fired. That tells me that they were trying to lure the police and first responders into the scene.
Police have released this photo of the RV involved, and the FBI has launched a website for tips in their search for clues.
The color of the smoke of the explosion is indicative of a certain type of explosive.
In Nashville, I'm Daryl Forges reporting.
Right after the explosion, flights were grounded for a short time at the city's airport. The American Red Cross has now opened a reception center for victims displaced by the explosion. This is happening right now. Colorado Springs police are investigating a fire that sent 3 people, including a kid, to the hospital on Christmas Eve. Firefighters were called to the home off of Oro Blanco Drive, and it's near Barnes on the northeast side of Colorado Springs, and this was last night at about 9 o'clock. When they arrived, they found 2 adults and the child injured from the fire. 2 of the victims had serious burns, but it's unclear who was seriously injured.
We do have paramedics on all our engine companies, and the 3 patients were all treated by our paramedics and transported in 2 AMR ambulances.
Now, if you've got any information, please call police. Well, turning to our no-wait weather with meteorologist Christina San Juan. Christina, a beautiful Christmas day in Colorado.
Yeah, Tony, didn't feel a whole lot like Christmas out there today, but who's complaining about that? Temperatures made it into the middle 50s here in the Springs, even some 60s thrown in there over toward Baca County, 63 degrees over toward Fremont County as well. Did really good today, 63 degrees for your Christmas, and then no issues for the rest of this evening. We should keep those winds fairly light through the evening hours, but we are going to see some more clouds move in. That's at least going to keep our temperatures up somewhat. We'll still get cold, but not nearly as cold as last night and the last couple that we've been used to. Out into the eastern plains, going to fall to the lower 20s. Same story over toward Pueblo County, 32 degrees, sitting right at freezing overnight in Fremont County, and some teens in Teller County. So waking up tomorrow, we are going to see quite a bit more clouds than we have seen the last couple of days, but that's not going to stop our temperatures from warming well into the 50s yet again. I actually think it's going to be warmer than what we got to today, but we do have some changes on the way for the second half of our weekend. I'll talk more about that coming up later in the show. Tony.
Well, thank you, Christina. How about some good news? Today, the Salvation Army is making sure everyone has a good Christmas and a full stomach. 11 News reporter Megan Heiler is live outside the Colorado Springs Salvation Army. And now, Megan, they were able to help a lot of people today.
Yeah, Tony, today the Salvation Army was able to serve over 2,000 people. They say now more than ever, the need is there. Thank you. 2020 has been a rough year for almost everyone.
So the need for that is even greater. A lot of people have been furloughed or they've been getting reduced hours because of COVID. We've seen a great demand for our food pantry, for our rental assistance, and so we knew that the demand for our holiday meals would be up.
That's why the Salvation Army helps every year. This Christmas, they served people in Woodland Park, Fountain Valley, Manitou Springs, and a Colorado Springs homeless shelter.
Oh, they've been so appreciative and thankful because it's been a difficult year, and for some of them, just having a nice meal is just such a blessing. Merry Christmas.
This year, things were obviously different. There was no in-person dining, and meals were either picked up or delivered. Still, the community turned out to make sure everyone still had a Merry Christmas.
Constantly, we're amazed at the community's response to the Salvation Army and our helping other people.
And the Salvation Army has been serving people here for about 30 years. They say they want to thank the community for their continued support. Live in Colorado Springs, I'm Megan Heiler, KKTV 11 News.
Hey, thank you so much, Megan. Well, 11 minutes of nonstop news continues with this. With millions traveling for the holidays, health experts are warning we could see COVID-19 cases skyrocket. Officials were asking everyone to stay home to celebrate Christmas and New Year's. According to CNN, December has been the deadliest month since the pandemic started, with more than 4.8 million new cases reported. Now in total, more than 18.6 million cases have been reported in the U.S. Here in Colorado, we've seen more than 322,000 cases. The good news is vaccine distribution has begun. So far, more than 63,000 doses have been given out across the Centennial State. Well, despite health officials asking people to stay home for the holiday, well, yesterday was the busiest travel day in the U.S. since the COVID pandemic started. The TSA says it screened more than 846,000 people at airports nationwide. That's a third of the 2.5 million people who flew on Christmas Eve a year ago. Christmas Eve follows 6 straight days of U.S. air travel numbers near or more than 1 million passengers. Well, looking ahead now, people flying from the United Kingdom into the U.S. must test negative for COVID-19. Starting Monday, travelers will have to test negative 3 days before their flight. Right now, a new strain of coronavirus that is reportedly more transmissible is being rapidly spread across the UK. The CDC says that passengers must have a copy of their negative test results. At least 40 other countries have restricted travel from the UK. Well, if you're traveling soon or know someone who is, listen up. The CDC says the timing of your COVID-19 test before flying could play a big role in reducing the virus's spread. Researchers report getting tested 3 days before a flight reduces the spread by less than 10%. However, testing on the day of departure would be 37 to 61% more effective. The paper has not been peer-reviewed. The CDC says if travel is unavoidable, everyone should be tested for COVID-19 before and after. Well, this is happening right now. A group in Colorado is asking Governor Jared Polis to reconsider his decision not to prioritize COVID-19 vaccines for inmates. Earlier this month, Governor Polis said he would prioritize inmate vaccinations. Now the Black Democratic Legislative Caucus of Colorado, with leaders in the Black faith community, are hoping Governor Polis will change his mind again. There's a 3-phase timeline for vaccine distribution. Leaders say that prisoners should be in between phases 2 and phase 3, meaning they would be given the vaccine after people older than 65, but before the rest of the public. Opponents say only inmates who are immunocompromised or 65 and older should get priority vaccines.
The issue isn't whether or not certain folks can get infected. The only issue is, will those infected be at higher risk for death?
When you factor in the congregate living that they do live in and the inability to adequately socially isolate, that makes inmates in a correctional facility at higher risk, and therefore they should be prioritized for the vaccination as such.
Well, state data shows more than 6,000 inmates have tested positive for the coronavirus. Well, police in Colorado need your help tonight. Take a close look at the 3 men. The trio of suspects has been given the title 2019 Most Wanted Safe Street Criminals by Pueblo Police. All 3 have warrants for a laundry list of crimes, and all 3 are currently on the run. If you know the location of either Daniel Crookham, Anthony Sanchez, or Francisco Buraman, there's an easy way you can help police. Just simply call Pueblo Crime Stoppers, the number right there on your screen, 719-542-STOP. This is new at 10. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he is convinced that President Trump is more determined than ever to increase stimulus payments to $2,000 checks per person. Now, right now, the $900 billion relief package is in Florida, where President Trump is spending the holidays. Congress passed the bill earlier this week, but it has yet to be signed by the president. After the bill was passed, President Trump hinted he wouldn't sign it unless Congress gave Americans $2,000 instead of the $600. Congress is going to be back on Capitol Hill next week to continue discussing the relief package. Well, an emergency alert issued along a Colorado river. Coming up after the break, the latest out of Pitkin County as an ice jam released, forcing people to find higher ground. And a winter storm slamming part of the U.S., an update from the east as people continue to battle the elements.
And into Tuesday.
Well, thank you, Christina. This is new at 10. Countries across Latin America are starting to distribute their COVID-19 vaccines. Healthcare workers in Mexico, Costa Rica, and Chile started getting their vaccines yesterday. Healthcare workers who are assisting patients and fighting against coronavirus on the front lines are the first to get the shot. Argentina got their first shipment of the vaccine as well. They're expected to start giving it to healthcare workers soon. Well, in just 2 days, the coronavirus vaccine will begin rolling out across the EU. The European Commission president tweeted the announcement this morning, saying, quote, she hopes citizens will soon be able to return to their normal lives. The European Commission granted a conditional marketing authorization for the Pfizer vaccine on Monday, making it the first COVID-19 vaccine authorized in the EU. Well, the pandemic continues to take a toll on college sports. Coming up after the break, a major announcement from a top-tier basketball program after multiple positive COVID-19 tests. And we're counting down the top 11 videos of 2020 sent in by our KKTV viewers. Some moments you won't want to miss when we come back.
Precious Metals Report brought to you by Hallenbeck Coin Gallery. Whether buying or selling,
Welcome on back. We're nearing 2021, and in honor of leaving 2020 behind, I wanted to share our top 11 videos from the past year sent in by just some of our amazing viewers. We're starting with number 11 and about 80,000 views. A social distancing win from the staff at the Dewdrop Inn down in Pueblo. Cheesy,
and here you go,
but effective. At number 10, a charm of hummingbirds in Colorado Springs. Elizabeth sent us this video and 100,000 people flocked to see it. Number 9, Michael Randall sent us this bird's eye view of the Christmas lights display on Rawhide Lane in Colorado Springs. And at the number 8 spot, a Colorado Springs family shared a perfect moment. Kathy tells us Zay was stuck in the hospital last Christmas, so in January, they took him to Disney World, and the moment he met Mickey was priceless. The 7th most viewed video, a massive herd just south of Buena Vista, shot by Michael Randall. At number 6, 215,000 people watched this video of customers at Costco off Nevada and Colorado Springs buying up all the toilet paper back in March. That same month, our number 5 most watched video was when the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region adopted out every single animal. The number 4 spot goes to a couple of bear cubs just being adorable. Eve's Revolution shared the video with us so that we could share it with you. Number 3, this was a big one. More than 2 million people witnessed the moment police and protesters were coming together to embrace each other in Colorado Springs back on June 11th. Number 2, just a moose being a moose down in Pueblo. Robert got us this video and 2.5 million people were excited to watch. At number 1.
Well, this is from all of us. It's for you, bud. Happy birthday. Take a look at that.
Students at Pueblo West High School came together to take care of one of their own. A simple gift of shoes and a video game went a long way, and the world noticed. Nearly 3 million people have watched this moment. All right, well, this is new at 10. The pandemic is forcing a major college basketball team to end their season. The Duke women's basketball team hasn't played in nearly 2 weeks because of 2 positive COVID-19 tests. The Lady Blue Devils' next scheduled game was supposed to be next Thursday. Now they're stepping off the court for the season. The men's basketball team plans to keep playing.
We're back, Taylor and Richie here. Richie, you know, I've been thinking, why don't we talk sports around the fire more often?
Honestly, Taylor, I'm comfortable.
So cozy.
Christmas gear is wonderful, nice and warm.
Lovely.
I know. We could do this more often, but that's next week.
We look.
All right, before we go, I hope everyone had a wonderful Friday, whether or not you celebrate Christmas. I wanted to give a shout out to some of my neighbors. They set up a pirate ship for Halloween each year, and then they decked it out with Christmas decorations this year. I had another neighbor ask me to share it on TV. Awesome setup. I could not deny that. Wanted to share it with all of you at home. They went all out. I mean, that is a legit, well put together pirate ship right there. Just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all the first responders and healthcare workers out there who spent the day keeping us safe. Have a wonderful weekend. Ashley Franco will be on the desk tomorrow night.